biggest one on me. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." He kept saying, "I am he." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day, so Jesus made the mud and opened his Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." Others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" They were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that he is our son, and he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he can now see, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. Only I do know that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to the one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And then they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. Jesus said, "I came to this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin, but now that you say we see, your sin remains."
You did very well. Thank you, all of you. This morning's gospel reading is full of confusion. We have the event itself, Jesus spitting into dirt to make mud and smearing it on blind man's eyes. But after that, we have a veritable pandemonium. No one can seem to figure out what has happened. First, we have the neighbors who can't figure out if this is the same man who used to beg. Same guy, different guy. He keeps saying, "I am the man," but they can't get their heads around it. He tells them the whole story, beginning to end, and yet they aren't satisfied. So they take him to the Pharisees. He repeats the whole thing. I don't know why I did that. So they take him to the Pharisees, and he repeats the whole thing. But the Pharisees also don't get it. So here comes the phone call to the parents because he's their son. They should be able to explain what happened. The parents have no clue how to answer the questions, so they turn things back to their son. So the neighborhood tribunal gets going again, asking what has happened and trying to figure it out. The subversion of this story, the paradox, is that the one who was once blind is now the only one who can see properly. He's the only one with enough vision to see Jesus, to accept the miraculous healing he has been offered, and to tell people about it. Everyone who lives with sight has eyes to see what happened, but they lack the sight to comprehend it. So what makes the one able to see Jesus, beyond eyesight, that is, really see and know and feel who Jesus is and accept his healing? And what makes the others in the story, the parents, the neighbors, the Pharisees, unable to see or understand what's happened? Part of the answer to that question is in assumptions. At the beginning of the story, the disciples ask Jesus a question. "Rabbi, who sinned?" they ask, "this man or his parents?" The parameters for the question itself show the assumptions made. Someone must be at fault for this because the blindness is understood to be a punishment. The disciples are looking for an answer inside of a box for their assumptions. They desire a binary answer, the parents or the son. Who is to blame? Now, there are two kinds of questions, open questions and closed questions. A closed question gives someone firm parameters. A more open way of asking the disciples' question might be, "Rabbi, why was this man born blind?" The question itself sets up the conversation. The question shows how willing to listen the asker might be. In this story, the disciples have asked a closed question. They are looking for a simple answer from Jesus. Who sinned, this man or his parents? Jesus moves them out of the binary question and into metaphor, into mystery, which is where healing can happen. Instead of responding directly to the question the disciples ask, Jesus uses metaphors of light and darkness to explain his own work in the world. Then he takes dirt, spits on it, rubs it in his hands, and smears it on the man's eyes. This physical smearing, this touch, and this dirt creates healing. The man washes in the pool, comes out, and sees. And this is where the chaos begins. Though the disciples have had firsthand witness to this, and though the blind man never wavers in his story, the people just can't understand what has happened. From the time of their question through the end of the story, their parameters, their blinders, don't allow them to experience the miracle. Their own assumptions keep them from understanding what has happened. When do our own assumptions get in the way? Our assumptions about others and their capabilities, our assumptions about God. In our first reading from the book of Samuel, we see again how assumptions get in the way. Samuel has been asked to make known the Lord's chosen one. So Jesse's sons pass by Samuel one by one, and one by one Samuel rejects them. The family assumes that one of the older brothers will be chosen, for they are far more capable. They are strong and attractive men. They assume that these are God's criteria, but again and again, the parameters of their understanding are pushed aside. Finally, when David shows up, Samuel hears from God that he is the one and anoints him. And remember, David is the writer of Psalm 23 that talks about anointing. So that's cool. They put those two together in the lectionary. Never mind that David is the youngest, or that he has just been keeping sheep. He's not real, by our worldly standards, he's not king material at all. Never mind that his brothers and dad assumed he wouldn't even be considered. God breaks through this closed system, breaking through assumptions and the parameters we attempt to place on God. God is bigger than the boxes we make for him. Perhaps our word of hope this morning is that God takes on all we presume, all of our assumptions and closed questions, and breaks through them to create miracles. Maybe our good news is that even when we are lost in our confusion and trying to figure out where something came from or how something happened, God is still in the midst of us, working to heal those who are ready. We are all much more like the disciples than we would care to admit, asking closed questions of Jesus. And we are all more like David's brothers than we would care to admit, dismissing the youngest, the one who only works as a shepherd. And we are all much more like the neighbors than we would like to admit, unable to accept the witness given to us because it doesn't fit in our worldview. The good news is this: our confusion doesn't hinder God's work. Our questions don't stop Jesus from doing good in the world. Our assumptions can't get in the way of the prophets God chooses. Maybe the invitation for us then is to be honest in our confusion. Let's look around and see where God has been, is, and always will be at work in our world, within us and within our surroundings. God is breaking through our assumptions. God is challenging us to really see. God is challenging us to really see his upside-down kingdom. God is challenging us to really see the goodness in our enemies. God is challenging us to really see God's presence in the downtrodden and marginalized in our society. God is challenging us to be at one with his presence and be his beacons of light in this world. He is the potter, and we are the clay. We were blind, but now we see. Thanks be to God.